Hi everybody, welcome back to Bentley House. I'm Aira and today I am making another Addams family member. I am making the giant lovable butler Lurch. And in particular, I'm making the 1960s version of Lurch that was played by Ted Cassidy because I really feel like that it's in the television show that you get to see most of his personality. In the movies, he's kind of more of a background character, so I just wanted to focus on that version of Lurch. I am using another doll kit made by Sandra Stacy. She is the one who runs SAS Mini Dolls, and I'll leave her website in the description box below if you want to check out her kits. It's the same artist that made the body parts that I made Fester from. She has such a wide variety of sculpts that it was really easy for me to go through some of the different kits that she had and pick out ones that I felt specifically reflected the Addams family members. This one is the one I picked out for Lurch because of the square jawline and kind of the elongated skull. I thought he would do really well. Just like with Fester, I'm not really showing you how I put the body together because if you do buy a doll kit, you need to really put it together the way that the doll artist asks you to. This one was really interesting because I wanted to give him kind of a hunchback and really broad shoulders. He's also 7 inches tall as compared to Uncle Fester, who is just a little bit under 6 inches. These are the instructions I went through, so if you do buy a doll kit, there's a few artists out there who sell them. Make sure to follow their instructions. Now from here I'm going to show you what I am doing to clothe him. The majority of this video is going to be my fight with clothing. I am by no means a seamstress or someone who makes even real life clothing, so I'm kind of winging it here, and what I'm doing is I'm looking at doll patterns, and I will put the name of the website that I was looking at. This website does a lot of patterns for play scale like Barbie and Ken, and so I'm not using their patterns specifically because they won't fit my dolls, but I am looking at the shapes that they are creating with the patterns, and I'm laying Lurch down and then tracing, kind of putting the patterns around the shape of his body. Especially with the hump and his particular like hunched over look, it is going to be kind of a trial and error of me fitting this pattern to his body. So what I'm drawing out right now isn't even the final pattern because most of these pieces I end up making twice because I make one to fit it onto his body and then I make it a second time with adjustments so that it fits correctly. I am not going to be sewing this outfit, I'm going to be gluing it, and this is an essential tool. This is a clover iron. It comes with several different attachments. You can usually find them on Amazon. It gets extremely hot. This thing is dangerous and scares me, but it is essential for this project. And make sure if you do order one, you get some kind of stand so that it's up off your work table because it is a hot iron. This is some fabric I got from the discount section. I don't know what material it is, but it was really nice. It said calico, but I'm not sure if that's just the pattern. And it was just really nice to work with, but I thought it would be a good suit material. This first shape that I'm working with is 1/2 of one pant leg. So I'm tracing it with the long sides with their back to each other to create one pant leg, and this way I don't have to seam them together. There's probably going to be some actual seamstresses out there cringing at how I describe things. I'm going to try my best. So first I'm going to hem the pant leg just by using a little bit of tacky glue, and I folded it over, and this is where the iron is going to come in handy. It cures the glue almost immediately, and it gives each fold a very crisp edge. So this is why I feel like the iron is essential. What I'm ironing on top of is it's just an old t-shirt folded over a lot. If you iron right on top of your mat, it is going to melt, so be careful of that. Now I am folding the pant leg so that the right side of the fabric is on the inside. When I say right side, that means the side of the fabric that you want to see. And I'm going to hem along the straight edge and then flip it inside out. This is where it's already flipped inside out. After they're flipped, I can join the two sides together. So I'm going to add some glue to one side of the crotchal area, or anyway, and I'm going to push those two together and then go ahead and cure that glue with my iron real quick. And it's really nice because it sets up immediately, like I said. So now I have a front pair of pants. The back of it's still kind of open, kind of like a hospital gown type situation, but that's okay because I am not making these clothes removable. They will be on him forever. So when I have the pants the way that I like them, I can flip him over and glue the back of the pants straight onto the doll. So I don't actually have to make a full pair of pants. That upper area is going to be covered by the jacket. Now I do feel like these pants were a little bit too short, and so this is a situation where I happen to remake them. And the pants that he has on are the short pair, and then I made them just a little bit longer to go further down to cover his boots, and I think that I made them just a little bit thinner. So now they're back onto Lurch and I like how they look, but then I realized I need to actually paint the porcelain before I attach the fabric. I'm just using acrylic paint and I decided to make his boots just a flat black. I did a lot more detail to Fester's boots, but this is how I just decided to do Lurch. I feel like his shoes would be a lot more plain. And then once those have dried, I'm going to cover it in a matte finish that is specific for porcelain. Now this is a little silicone paint palette that I recently got, and it is made by the Stuart Dollhouse Creations company, and I'll try and remember to put a link to that below as well so that you can check that out if you want to, but if not, I'm sure you can just search it. But I'm trying to get better at conserving paint, especially when I'm working on such a small surface as a face, and so that's why I'm using this palette. Now I'm going for the 1960s Lurch, and so I have his picture up so I can kind of keep an eye on him. This face up, or you might think face down, I'm not quite sure, it depends on your opinion, your personal opinion, was interesting, and it took a while for me to kind of get what I wanted. I was trying to use watered down acrylic paint and it really was not working on the surface. And I felt like I used that technique with Fester. I'll have to go back and watch the video, but I was having a real hard time with it with Lurch. I finally came up with a process of where I could apply the acrylic paint, let it dry, and then go back with the paintbrush with just water on it, no paint at all, and then I could soften the edges of the paint mark, and this gave a much more subtle transition between the color of the face, the natural face, to the parts of the face that I wanted to darken. Now Lurch has a lot of creases and he has kind of some I think they're called smile lines, but his are more like frown lines, and they're up in his forehead, so it was interesting to try and get those marks, especially this is a doll where his face is kind of smooth, so I kind of had to force that perspective. I did try to remove the original paint, at least in the eyebrow and lip area, and I do believe the original kit's paint was baked on, so I did have to paint over those areas. And for the lips, I mixed up a gray / orangish for the lips, and I really liked how that turned out. It still kind of had a fleshy tone, but it was like grayed down to like an Addams Family type flesh tone. Also, Ted Cassidy had a little mole, so I made sure to put that in there as well. So I was still struggling with getting the watered down acrylic paint to make a smooth blush slash shadow on the side cheeks. So I used a Q-tip and some chalk pastel that I had ground down into a powder to make those subtle transitions. I also did a little bit around the eyes, and I really like how that turned out. And just like with the boots, I also sprayed his face with the matte finish. So now I can actually start putting the clothing on. So we're going back to the pants. To make sure that they're secured to the body, I'm going to use tacky glue and the iron and just go ahead and tack it down and pull the pants. I'm going to make sure that I'm looking at the front of the pants so I don't pull too hard and they become crooked. I'm going to make sure that I check back and forth and don't stick the iron straight in the glue. It makes a really fun hissing sound with a little bit of smoke, so try to avoid that. I just did that in the video, but it will eventually kind of burn off of the iron. But go ahead and just keep checking the front while you are putting the pants on to make sure that they stay the way you want them to. Now these pants aren't perfect, but I do like how they turned out, and I can kind of adjust them a little bit whenever I'm setting him up for photos because there is a little bit of wiggle room with the leg area. That sounded weird. I'm sorry. Poor Lurch. Yeah. Anyway, now we're moving on to the shirt. This is the shape that is going to end up being both the front and the back of the shirt, and so that's why I am drawing it. Well, I drew it together for the back of the shirt, and then I drew it 2 times separate for the front of the shirt because I want the front to open. So to put the shirt together, I am going to go ahead and hem it similar to the way I did with the pants. Actually, this isn't hemming, really. It's just putting the pieces of the shirt together. And this fabric, there wasn't really a right side. This is just kind of a white, almost a muslin type fabric, and so either side was okay. So I did the sides of the shirt first, and now I'm doing, it kind of looks like a tank top because I don't end up making sleeves for this shirt because you won't be able to see it anyway. So we'll just say the tank top part at the top I join, and then when I flip it inside out, it should look more like a vest. And so I did both sides the same way. Now, when I tried to put it onto Lurch, I ended up busting one of the shirt seams open. And this is because he's got really long arms, really broad shoulders, so it's really rough on the shirt to pull it all the way up his arms and over his hunch. So what I decided to do was to separate the back pieces into 2 pieces, very similar to the front. And then I also made a straight line across instead of that dip at the neckline. This is going to help with it going up the hunch of the back. This is like the weirdest clothing tutorial ever because who would ever make this? But I hope you're finding it interesting, at least the thought process of how I'm putting this together if you decide to do it in the future. Now, because the back of the shirt is not going to be seen, that's why I was okay with chopping it in half. And so now I have basically 2 halves of a shirt that I can put up his arms separately. I don't have to worry about the shirt busting. Again, because these clothes are not going to be clothes that come off of the doll at any point, I don't have to worry about it being an actual finished piece. So what I did was hem the bottom of the shirt, which is what you just saw, and then I hemmed the side of the front panel, and that is the panel that's going to overlap. Now you're not going to see a lot of the shirt, you're really only going to see the upper collar part, and you're going to see just a very small hint of the bottom of the shirt. And so the center part, I'm not really worrying about all that much. Now, if you do want to make some kind of doll, and it's a little bit see-through, I don't know if you can tell that, but like I said, it's under a jacket, so it's okay. But if you do want to make an actual nice shirt for a guy, you might want to find a better tutorial than this one, because this one's going to get covered up by a jacket. So now I am going to go ahead and pull the side of the shirt that is covering the other side. I put a little bit of glue on it, and then I just overlaid it over the center of the shirt. And then once I was happy with how the front of the shirt looked, then I could work on the back of the shirt. I'm always going to be more concerned with how the front of the doll looks, because most of the time you will be facing the front. The back is still important, but I want to make sure that the front is how I like it first, and then I'm going to attach the back. So now I'm working on the collar of the shirt, and basically all I'm making is a long, thin rectangle that is hemmed on the top and the bottom, and then the sides, instead of hemming those, I just kind of fray checked them on the side with tacky glue. Now once I kind of cut it to size as best as I could, and once I had that done, I'm going to first glue it on the very back of his neck so that it's centered, and then I'm going to pull it around either side, making sure that I lay it flat, and then the collar part is sticking up along his neck. And it's not the greatest, but that's the way I could figure out how to do it. So I kind of started at the back and then laid it around each side, just kind of use the iron to fit it to his shoulders and neck. So now we're moving on to his jacket, which was the part that I felt the most pressure about, because it's going to be the most seen. I mean, you see the pants really well, but it's just pants. So the jacket, I wanted to give kind of I think they're called ducktails, that kind of look too, because I feel like Lurch is always dressed pretty formal. I used the large pattern for the back, and then I kind of used the same pattern. I just made a few adjustments with my ruler to make that vest looking shape for the front. Because I learned so much with making the shirt and learning about it splitting apart when I was trying to put it over his broad shoulders, I went ahead and split the back of the jacket in half as well, so that I can do the same thing where I put each half of the jacket onto Lurch separately, and then I will join the jacket later. So now I'm hemming the bottom of the coat. At first I hemmed the ducktail. I just folded over kind of a triangle. Now I'm hemming the curve, and all I did was make some very tiny cuts along the curve and then put some glue and folded it over with my finger. And then I attached the back panels and the vest panels just like I did with the shirt. So that's what you're seeing there. And now I'm going to hem the front panels of the jacket. And I'm realizing this is going really, really fast, but I don't feel like I'm proficient enough to give you guys a tutorial. I'm just kind of showing you how I'm putting him together. I hope this is interesting and helpful in some way, but it's not going to be a super great tutorial. So I tried on his jacket, and it was a little bit short, so I recut the front pieces, and I was able to detach the old ones and then just reattach the new ones, which was nice because I didn't have to remake the jacket panels in the back. And so I reattached them, and I really liked the length on Lurch a lot better that time. And because those were too short, I went ahead and decided to make the sleeves longer, because I figured they'd probably be too short too. Somewhere in my pattern making, I was just making everything a little bit too short. Maybe I wasn't taking into account the hemming. So this is one sleeve piece, and the first thing I did was hem the bottom edge of the sleeve, and now I'm putting glue along the long edge to go ahead and attach those pieces. Again, I'm going to hit it with the iron so that it immediately cures, and then like the pants leg, I'm going to flip it inside out. Now, attaching the sleeve took a little bit of experimentation and finesse, and it's still not done perfectly, but it kind of fits inside of the side of the jacket. So this is one side of the jacket. I'm just going to call it the vest part of the jacket is inside out, but the sleeve is right side out. And what I'm going to do is put glue on the very edge of the sleeve all around. I'm going to thread it through the vest as best as I can, and I'm doing it this way so I don't get a bunch of glue on the fabric by shoving it in the other way. So I'm just kind of threading it through. and then I'm going to line up the edges of the sleeve and the edge of the jacket, and then I'm going to hit it with the iron. And it is going to touch a bit of glue because my pattern making was not perfect, and I did discover it was easier to put a piece of paper inside the sleeve area so not everything got glued together. This kind of helped each side glue separately. And anyway, that's how I attached a sleeve. You may be sitting there going, no, that's not right. But it seemed to work for this project. This is all kind of a bit of an experiment. While I was working on this, I was looking at doll clothing patterns, but I wasn't really reading the directions. I was just kind of figuring out the way that I felt like the shapes should go together. So here's one half of the jacket put together. I ended up really liking it, and so I decided to go ahead and just glue it on. I mean, no time like the present. I think this is really good practice before I get to Gomez. If you're wondering why I'm going in the order that I'm going, I'm kind of starting with my least favorite characters. Not that I have a least favorite character, but I'm kind of what I'm doing is working up to my most favorite characters, so I feel like my doll skills have improved by the time I get to my favorites. So I'm doing the back of the jacket and the front of the jacket similar to the shirt, where I glued them on, and then I made sure the flap of the jacket overhangs over the so I finished one side and then overhung it over the unfinished side, so that he had kind of a like the area the buttons go on. So now I'm doing his collar. I wanted to do a little bit of a better job, so I did the same kind of a hem, but then I only did half of a collar at first, and then I'm going to do the other half second. I felt like when I did it all in one round, there were lots of wrinkles and it didn't work so well. This one kind of meets in the back, and so I'm going to add a back panel because there is a hole in the back of the jacket. His little hump area was a little bit too much for the jacket seams, I guess, and so I'm just laying a panel. This is just a long rectangle of fabric over from the very top of his collar over the hump in his back all the way down, and I decided to split it at the bottom. I didn't really know what to do with that part, but I ended up splitting it in half so that each side of the rectangle would go on either side of the ducktail detail, and I hope that looks okay. I didn't really do a lot of research on how those jackets should look, but for me it covered up a lot of the problems I had in the back, and like I said, it's on the back, so I'm not that worried about it. I also decided I wanted to add some cuffs to his jacket. It looked okay without the cuffs, but I feel like the cuffs just added a little bit more detail. For the buttons on the jacket, I didn't have ones that I liked that were small enough for his coat, and so I decided to grab some Fimo clay and my extruder. And an extruder is just something that shoves clay through like a die, and it makes these really small links of clay. And so I bake them in the oven, and probably I should have made them a little bit straighter than this, and in hindsight I would have made them a little bit bigger, but they do end up working. And once they're cooked, I'm just going to cut them into slices, and they're very tiny, so you can get very small button details with this method if you would like to. They ended up being kind of gray, even though I used black Fimo, so I do apply them and then go ahead and paint them once more. Now, if you're smarter than me, you will get a new toothpick with not so much globby glue. I ended up making it work for me, but this is very fiddly to try and get these buttons on here. But I'm just going to go slowly, one at a time. I think I lost like 5 buttons in the process, so if you try this, I highly suggest you make more buttons than you actually need. You can see as I go along that these buttons are really blending in, and that's because that black Fimo, when I cut it, did turn kind of grayish. So I'm adding a coat of glossy black paint, and I decided on glossy black because I did want just a little bit of shine. It gives a little bit of an extra texture detail, and I also put buttons on his cuffs. Okay, so all of that I just said was like bleh, right? Just felt like, oh my goodness, so much information and craziness and not making senseness. But now we're to the really the part that I really don't understand or know how to do, and that is wigging. So what I've done is put Lurch into a little medicine bottle, which is something that I learned. I have a viscose hank of blonde hair because I'm doing the 1960s version of Lurch. He's blonde, dirty blonde. I'm going to be covering him in a sandwich bag because the viscose and the glue could both get really attached to the clothing, and I just worked so hard, so I want to make sure that I keep him protected. The scissors and the little comb are from a mustache grooming kit, and honestly they worked really, really well. Now I am going to show you clips of how I started doing this, but there are so many other wigging tutorials online. People who wig Monster High dolls, there's even people who wig Dollhouse dolls. I kind of winged it. I winged my wigging and I do like the result. It did take me about 3 hours. I had major back muscle pain by the end of it, like, you know, hanging over the top of the doll. But in the end, I do like how it turned out. I do feel like maybe if I get better and better, I could maybe one day do a wigging tutorial, but at the moment I don't feel like my techniques were solid enough that I could share it with you that in a way that you could follow along, much like the rest of this tutorial. One thing I did learn that was really great was to use watered down glue as kind of a hair gel. When I first applied the hair, it was sticking straight out from like his forehead and the back of his head, and it was so easy just to get a little bit of water and glue and just kind of stick it down, and it stayed, and it kind of tamed the viscous. Is it viscous or viscose? This is the final look that I have for him. I decided that it was just a little bit too blonde. If you look at his picture, he's actually very dirty blonde, and there's lots of like black streaks that you can see. I don't know if he dyes his hair and he's got roots. I don't know what's going on there, but I decided he needed a little bit more of a color variation. So I took some chalk pastel and I started in the part of his hair and then just started adding it wherever I felt it needed to go. It gave him more of that kind of creepy look that all the Addams family members kind of go for, and I actually really like how it turned out. I think there probably is a way to do it where it doesn't take 3 hours, so I'm going to continue working on my processes before I do a full wigging tutorial. But here you can see the final Lurch with Uncle Fester. I think they are so amazing. I do feel like Lurch came out better than Uncle Fester, so I feel like maybe I'm getting better at this. I hope by the time I get to my favorite characters, I am not second guessing myself so much and feeling a little bit more confident so that I can get them to look as perfect as I want them to look. Here's Lurch in the house. I just wanted to set him up in a few scenarios to see how he looked. What's funny is this organ that you guys see was like the second miniature I made for this Addams family house. It's been waiting for Lurch for all these years, and he's finally made. And this is Lurch's bedroom. That's all I have for you today. I hope you guys enjoy this video. Let me know in the comments who your favorite Addams family member is. Maybe it will be the one I make next. I hope you have an amazing week, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!